Kanwal, coming back to you now, through the experience of some of your portfolio companies, what have been the key mistakes and the course correction that you've seen along the way as they've made that shift from just being digital only to being omni-channel?
So I think the first one is clearly treating it as two independent tracks, like I talked about it earlier. I think the second one is trying to do too much too soon, especially in how you expand. I think one of our biggest learning is that the offline world is a very complex, organism, if I may. And, understanding if you're launching EBO stores, then, literally starting with one store, understanding, what is driving consumer traffic, what are they looking for, what kind of unit economics are you getting in those kind of, stores, and then expanding maybe within the city, then understanding a city dynamic, and then going into a larger expansion. Similarly, if you are going into, for example, the more traditional, trade, whether it is modern trade or it's general trade. Once again, our learning has been start with a small cluster, understand what is the opportunity in terms of what kind of customer for traffic, what kind of strategies work there. Do you need to have assisted sale? Do you need to have some kind of a promotional activity? So all of that, I would say, is the first port of call in understanding, like any new launch, is what are the drivers of success in those markets. I think the second thing is that integrating some of these learnings, like for example, if you have a deep data, and I'll take an example of one of my personal investment in a company called Licious. Now, in Licious, they found that there were a lot of hotspots where a lot of customers are ordering their meat and their meat products in those clusters all across the country. Now, once they have that almost like a heat map, then you start thinking about saying, maybe I should design for my retail location in those markets. So once again, this is a great integration of data and how do you translate that to offline. So I think it is very much a game where you have to take a few baby steps. You're dealing with inventory, you're dealing with, distribution, and therefore, the critical driver of success here has to be how do you manage inventory, cash flows, working capital, and not just, pushing sales into the store and showing it as revenue. So I think those are some of the guardrails that we would advise our companies to be very thoughtful about.
Which categories at this point in time where you believe that the transition has happened and perhaps those are poised now for significant scale? Which are the categories that you believe will do well in making the transition, and which are the emerging categories that you see benefiting from this omni-channel approach?
Yes. So I think some of the categories such as electronics, and some of them have really made that online almost online only now presence, right? But I think when it comes to fashion, I think we are starting to see definitely an omni-channel play there. But I think there are new categories, especially in where there is customer experience. So for example, there is a company in our portfolio called Rento Mojo, which allows you to rent anything for your home. Now, this is a category which did not exist in the country, right? And because people are not used to renting everything for their home. Now, you need to give people an experience where they see, okay, what is the quality of what I'm renting? Is it of good quality? Is it, because they don't know what they're going to get when they're going to rent a used product. In fashion and lifestyle, I think there will be a continuous set of new brands, new experiences that we see a lot of new omni-channel off-taken.
Just a broader take on where we see things as far as the e-commerce market is concerned. I mean, through the steroidal growth that we saw through the pandemic, and of course then the normalization, where are things as we look at them today? What do you feel confident of? What are you concerned about? And again, since we always get you on spotting new trends, anything exciting on your radar at this point in time?
Sure. So, Shereen, I think e-commerce itself, there is a 2.0 which is starting to emerge. Clearly we see that there is a growing, opportunity to reach accessed areas, going deeper into smaller towns, going deeper into even tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 towns. And sometimes you need to almost design the business models to suit those kind of markets. And, we have recently invested in a company called Rosanna, which is doing assisted commerce in rural India. Now, that is a completely different way of manifesting an entire catalog of products, but you need to have somebody on the ground to help the consumer in making those choices. So that is one direction. I think quick commerce is certainly disrupting the overall commerce space in a very big way, and we are starting to see even categories like groceries and FMCG and some of the packaged food kind of products, which were finding it much more difficult to be sold because of unit price being smaller on e-commerce channels, now becoming far more amenable on the quick commerce channels. So on the digital side, we believe that it will continue to grow. I think Prashanth mentioned that earlier. We are seeing even in the report that the growth of the online digital channels, the total size of that category is growing faster than offline. But obviously, offline will remain the dominant point of purchase for most consumers. On the trend, Shereen, clearly, we are seeing almost multiple Indias emerging. We believe that, the urban India, what we call India One, there is going to be far more premiumization. We are already seeing consumers looking for experiences. We are seeing them looking for personalization. So there is a whole trend where, you need to have those ability to touch and feel, to be able to, experience what you're buying, not just the product, but the overall, the experience. Similarly, India too is all about value. How do you deliver me a great product, but at the right price? Their supply chain, efficiencies, the ability to manage the entire, distribution of those products at the right price points. And then like rural is just about starting to open. So that is one, I would say, interesting opportunity we are seeing in each market behaving differently, and therefore how do you design brands for each market is going to be an interesting opportunity. Then the second big one, which we're seeing very, very exciting opportunity, is this whole trend towards more wellness and more health. And consumers are starting to take much more notice about, the back of pack, notice about, what they are consuming, both inside and on their bodies. And of course, even in consumer health, we are starting to see a lot of self-care, a lot of consumer-driven healthcare, almost awareness and desire rather than just depending on, say, the traditional method of going to hospital and doctors and so on.
But Gaurav, how confident do you feel about continuing to grow revenues? And are there any new innovative ways that you are using at this point in time to reach out to new consumers and draw back existing consumers?
Yeah, so Shereen, in our category, essentially, so there are a few fundamental shifts which are happening in our category, and so I'll talk about those three shifts. So first is essentially a shift from unorganized to organized. A lot of people are actually moving to different cities, and as a consequence, they actually are moving away from their local jewelers, the traditional jewelers, and they're actually shifting to branded jewelers. Second shift that is happening is a lot of women, today's generation actually prefers everyday jewelry over, let's say, heavy, big wedding kind of jewelry. All big pieces are being replaced with smaller pieces. And I think third shift which is happening is this whole emergence of omnichannel, where people are using online more and more to discover the products, to discover the brands and so on. And so online is becoming more and more important in everyone's purchase decision making. In BlueStone, we are actually beneficiary of almost all these three tailwinds, and hence I feel that in general, I think for a very long time we will continue to see these tailwinds playing in our favor.
Okay, Gaurav being very, very careful with what he's saying, and I would imagine that is on account of the fact that they are possibly looking at going public sometime soon. But we will leave that conversation for another day. Gaurav, Kanwal and Prashanth, always a pleasure. Many, many thanks for joining us here to talk about the big insights from the report that you've just put out, but more importantly, how we see the omni-channel play for India's D2C brands. It's not online versus offline or online and offline. It will have to be an integrated track. That's the consensus emerging from the panel. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Young Turks. From all of us here on the show, goodbye. Many thanks for watching.